What's going on, guys? We're going to be talking about geometry, and can I get a Anyways, guys, it is Tech Tuesday. We are going to be talking about geometry on the Pro R. But in order to get into this boring subject that we're about to speak of, we got to go over to none other than Justin Smith.
Steve, I think you're on crack today. Do you normally do drugs or just on Tuesdays?
Just on Tuesdays, Justin.
Well,
just
thank you, because
Tuesdays.
someone has to ramp this stuff up because geometry is extremely boring, but we always choose these boring subjects anyway to talk about. I don't know why anybody tunes in anymore, Mitch. I just don't understand it.
Good question.
I think lunch is more exciting than maybe some of the stuff we talk about. But thank you if you are tuning in. Appreciate it. Steve's on a bender today for sure. Definitely going to piss off somebody.
It's from getting back from the sand sport, so I'm still delirious.
You're still wound up? Yeah. You've had zero sleep. Got back Monday, 2 in the morning. Yeah. Slept in your truck. Went to work.
Yep.
Monday.
Yep.
6:30.
Yep.
He's definitely delirious.
Didn't miss a day. Didn't miss a minute.
But he is here for all of your pleasure. But what we're going to talk about today is not exactly what we have done in the past when we cycled the Pro R, but what we are doing now is kind of concentrating on some of the things that are a little bit on the negative side, maybe a little bit on the positive side when it comes to track width scrub, overall width change as a car cycles, how that affects the way you drive it. Also, toe change in the front, and also some camber, which affects that track width scrub in the back. So we kind of got our Pro R set up where we can cycle it for you. We've got kind of our own Vanna White over here on the right-hand side, Tony White. There you go, Vanna, thank you. And then we've also got Jordan on the left. It's our Vanna twins to help us cycle this thing. So we've had a lot of people contact us after we cycled this thing the first time and had way more questions about some of the details of the geometry in this car. So Polaris advertises 27 and 29 inches of usable wheel travel. That's front and that's rear. Well, what they're doing with that is winning the travel wars and selling more units by having the most travel possible of all UTVs. Well, they have this thing called usable travel, and what that is they're adding some travel number in the sidewall of the tire when you land it and squish the sidewall. They're calling that extra travel. I think that's an absolute joke and should never be used, but I'm also not in the business of making friends, especially in the OEMs. Real travel numbers, though. Polaris lists at 22.25 and 24.5 inches. That's more the real number that we want to deal with. That's how far the hub itself moves through cycle, so 22 and change, 24 and change in the back. That's a pretty healthy number in a car that's fairly narrow when it comes to like race cars that can be 80 inches wide, or 78 by rule, or whatever the new rule is. They keep changing the rule. I think it's 80 now. But throughout this travel, there's a couple things that become a problem. One, track width scrub. As the vehicle goes up and down, or the tires go up and down, obviously everything's connected via trailing arm and radius rods, so the tires travel in an arc. They go narrower or get narrower when they're fully compressed. Near ride height, that's as wide as it could possibly be. And then at droop, they get much narrower. Well, that difference, if you hold a tape measure to the bottom, that difference in width measured on the ground as it cycles is called track width scrub. This is common for most of the geometry or most of the suspension designs in UTVs, but you want to have as little as you can possibly get away with. Less is better. Why? Because as that tire is traveling up and it's going sideways on the ground, you have no traction as that tire is sliding on the dirt, or you have very little. As long as it's pinching in and out, then it doesn't have full traction, not very good contact, which means if you're turning and you're going through the whoops, that tire is scrubbing width this way. It's not on the ground turning you. It can push straight through the corner instead of turning through the corner. The back, the same way. So if you're in the throttle and it's scrubbing sideways, well, that's actually doing its own little burnout and doesn't have as much forward momentum as you would want with the right foot. We'll show you a little bit of that right now. So, Vanna, please, let's raise this sucker up, okay? Take a look. Let's go to the back. And Mitch, you got a tape measure? Hang on one second. Put that tape right here where we're starting and just kind of pull out a little wider and let's see where that actually goes. Go ahead and go up, Tony. Pretty consistent from compression to about ride height, but watch how far away this is going to go as it starts to droop out. When the suspension droops all the way out, you can see that the tire itself, or the hubs, are getting narrower. That's good. And you can shut it off. So I've had your tape measure in the wrong spot, Mitch. But we've got about 5 or 6 inches of movement. So I'm going to put my finger right there. Let's see what you got. Yeah, about 6 inches. A little under 6 inches, about 5.5. So 5.5 per side is going to be 11 inches overall. 11 inches of total movement is quite a bit. Now, what we also saw, though, is there isn't very much width movement when the tires are completely compressed down to ride height. So as long as you're driving along and you hit something that compresses the car, you got plenty of traction, tires aren't moving at all width-wise, and it's going to have a lot of momentum if you get in the gas. But if the tire droops out and narrows up, that is like, say, for instance, going through the whoops or a little bit of a jump, or a vehicle gets a little light over a rise, then that extra scrub on the side, you're not going to have the traction that you need going forward. Why does this have so much scrub? Well, that's because partially geometry design, overall length and positioning of the radius rods in the back. This width naturally has an arc, and the farther that it droops out, the more it arcs inward. And you can't really change that, can't do much about it. Another reason that we have this much is, Tony, you've got your angle finder, right? Can you do me a favor? Let's see what we got for camber in the back. So fully drooped, we've got -1. It bounces, I think, between 1 and 2, right? Somewhere in that range. 1, 1.5. All right, we're showing 1, but earlier we were measuring this thing. It's about 1.5 degree negative. So what that means is fully drooped, then the top of the tire is kicked out. One of the reasons for that overall design in this, thanks Tony, appreciate it, is that it saves the CV angle. So CV and axle coming into that hub, if the tire was vertical or drooped out with a little bit of negative camber, that's more angle on the CV, and that is the limiting factor for travel in most of these. As soon as you over-angle a CV, you're done. You're going to blow that thing up, or you're going to overheat it and blow it up. Either way, one of the tricks to get more travel is to throw positive camber in the system, and you save the CV assembly. Now, that's great to get more travel, to get the number, to sell the vehicle to the public and saying I've got more than everybody else does. But it's not really good when it comes to the geometry of doing that and gaining positive camber. That just adds to the track width scrub on this. So not really my favorite way to do it. I would prefer to have less travel and have tires perfectly vertical at droop, if not a little bit negative camber. I would sacrifice that just a little bit because you would lose some of that track width scrub, which is a problem, and you would also have a much more better alignment. So imagine with the tires all the way drooped out and cambered positive, and then go around a corner. Well, the tire is already riding a little bit on the outside corner of the tire, so you don't have very much traction in the back, which means drooped and turned, it might slide on you a lot easier. And everybody's in the corner in the whoops, so it's very important to have. Do you guys have any questions on any of that stuff? I know that we really wanted to have people go for it on this, and when it comes to the detail, if you get some, then bring it up. Steve?
Not yet, but a lot of people are very excited for this video. They say they love the geometry, Justin.
Oh, excellent. I was actually pretty good at geometry. How about you, Steve?
Do I look like I was good at geometry,
That's
Justin?
why I asked. Your demeanor forces me to put you on the spot. Nope, skip that, went straight to home ec. Mitch?
Cody wants to know, what's the max CV angle you can get before they blow? Have any manufacturers looked at going to something other than a CV?
So I can't tell you the exact number, but I bet you right now that Tony's going to throw over here. Vanna, can you throw a degree finder on that axle real quick? We'll find out. But while Tony's measuring that axle, let's see what we've got on it. I'll tell you that there's a lot of different joints and a lot of different mechanical items you can choose from for driveline. You know, U-joints have been tried, not good because U-joints don't have the timing. I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe. What do you got?
54 degrees.
54 from 90, which would be 36. And then you've got another degree positive. So from 90, we came down 36, and then we've got a positive 1 degree, so that's actually going to be 35 at the CV, and that does not blow up. So to answer your question, anything past that it probably will. I would say 36 to 38, you'll probably overheat it, maybe even start getting some clicking and probably hurt it. Other systems have been tried. U-joints don't work. Monoball doesn't work. Some of the road race stuff, which is a triple ball system like you get in an IndyCar or any of that stuff, doesn't have the degree and angle that you need. There's multiple styles of CV. You can get plunging, non-plunging. A plunging CV means that the CV itself, that is the angling portion with the center star balls and an outer star, that axle can move up and down X amount of degrees. That axle can actually slide in and out of the CV a couple of inches. Steve is having a very, very good time with my visual aids.
I really am.
Thank you, Steve. You're really making this hard on me. And that's also...
Oh, you're welcome.
You see what I did?
But
So the axle can actually plunge in and out of the CV a couple of inches. That style of CV, super popular with Class 10 cars, Class 1 cars, sand cars, pre-runners, because they're going to hold a lot of power, but the angle that they're maxed at is about 23 to 25 degrees. So you can't use that in a system like this. It doesn't have the angle. So you go to a non-plunging CV, which means the axle can actually travel a little bit farther degree-wise, but it cannot move in and out of the CV. It's clipped on both ends. That means you have to design a suspension system that will not allow the axle to extend or the CVs to try and pull apart. So it has to have an arc to it to maintain the overall length of the axle. That's why we see track width scrub narrowing up, because not all, I mean, Speed UTV does not do this. The later Wildcats do not do this, the double X. But every other UTV is using a non-plunging CV that has to have an arc to it so it doesn't have any travel on CV on the axle or axle plunge. I think that I was going to suggest which one I think is probably the best. A non-plunging CV with a plunging axle, in my opinion, is probably the best system, because you're going to get the most angle on the CV possible. You have an axle that can extend a little bit, which allows you to design a suspension system that's not on an arc. It'll come down and droop and stay near vertical. Longer axles required. The problem is plunging axles have been tried. Most of them fail. Not very good options for those. Robbie's got something working on the Speed UTV that seems to be nice, and on the earlier Wildcats, they gave it a shot. Let's see where the technology takes us, but that would be where I would concentrate. So, long answer to a short question, and it gets more complicated than that when you start designing hubs and arms. But there you go. Any other questions before I move on? Mitch?
So is this where longer travel / wider arms is better?
So the only thing that a longer travel system does is it gives you the extra width. That extra width means if the tire was 68 inches wide, or the overall the car is 68, and you have 20 inches of travel, if you just extend it 4 inches, then technically the tire got lower, you gain another inch of travel by doing that because of the overall length and leverage. That's the only thing you gain. It's not changing the CV angle, you're not changing anything else about the geometry, you're just by virtue of width gaining an inch or two. And that extra gain isn't very much when it comes to ride quality. We've run long travel, we've run standard travel. You know, our race cars are standard travel. We don't run the long travel stuff anymore, not because long travel is a problem. We're looking to save weight, a ton of weight is saved by a narrower system. And if it's not sacrificing the quickness of the race car going through big whoops, then we don't need it. So I'm on the fence on long travel. I think it's a good thing because you get a stronger arm, but I don't necessarily think it's better ride quality in all shapes and forms. So any other questions on that? All right, track width scrub. Finally, to put this to bed on a Pro R and Turbo R, the reasons that we've got almost a foot of width change in the car is to allow for the maximum travel number and to sell it for basically marketing reasons. Personally, I would go a little bit less travel, may not sell as many units, but you're going to have a better riding vehicle, less track width scrub, more traction, more acceleration all the way around. Subject change. Mitch, what was next on our list?
I'd have to look, but I have a pretty good question to continue on with scrub, Justin. What about scrub in the front? Isn't that more crucial?
So scrub in the rear is going to change your acceleration. For the worse, you're going to have less traction, and the back's going to come around on you a little bit quicker if it's drooped out and scrubbed. In the front, if you've got scrub issues, then you lose traction while turning. So if you want to point it in a direction and it's scrubbed, it's probably going to want to push through the corner. Is it more important? I don't know. I think I give them equal billing, because if you can't accelerate, then what's the point of going through a corner fast? Also, scrub is a problem when you're on the brakes. If it's scrubbing and you're on the brakes, you don't have the braking traction too, so it works both ways. Scrub in the front on this is almost the same number, right, Mitch? I think you've got some notes from the past, but it's nearly a foot of track width in the front that changes. And it changes in the same rough area while drooped, not so much fully compressed. So you won't see a traction loss if the thing is compressed and landed. You will see a traction loss if you come up to the whoops and the tire droops out and turn, it'll probably push. And these do, but they don't push as nearly as bad as a whole lot of other ones. Mitch.
Mr. John Crowley is asking if you
Don't you mean premature John?
Oh yeah, premature John. Sorry. If you choke up the suspension droop with a limit strap by an inch or two, would your scrub improve dramatically without losing much suspension performance?
Actually, John, you are correct. Yes, if you choked up the travel, you would lose the majority of the scrub that's in the system, as we showed you guys to begin with. Why don't you drop it back down? Let's look at this one more time. Mitch, tape measure. And since it's drooped, we can start in the right spot this time. Right there. All right, you guys, why don't you go down? So we're at 0. Let's see where it ends up. There's 1, 2, 3 inches. And now we're getting to about ride height. There's ride height. All right, stop right there and shut off. So from full droop to ride height, we've got about 5 inches per side of track width scrub. So John, if we choked up the last 2 inches of travel, we might save ourselves an inch or two of scrub, but it's not going to be like it knocked out 90% of it. I don't think you can choke up enough to make it a drastic change. So that's your answer to that, or my answer to that. But one thing I can tell you, with all of this kind of negative talk of scrub, and for the reasoning that they did it to sell vehicles, this is probably the best riding, I'm going to contradict myself, right, but it's the best riding UTV in the market stock. And I don't think that's mostly from a geometry standpoint. I think that's from a shock package with the live valve and X2 style shock, rebound and compression, both controlled. I think that's really where the ride quality comes from in this, and it's still my favorite from a standpoint of how it rides through big rough stuff. But if design could have been a little bit different, then maybe we could have sacrificed a few inches of travel. It could be more stable and still have the ride quality that's amazing all together. That would be my vote. Steve, you got something?
No.
Oh, thank you very much. All right, so moving on. Next thing, we've talked about track width scrub through travel. We've talked about camber change through travel. I mean, normally we would want to see a little negative camber at the top and a little negative camber at the bottom, but instead we see a little positive at the bottom, and that was design-wise to get a little bit more travel and save the CV. So we understand why they did it. And the last would be toe change or bump steer in the front. So as the tire cycles in the front, bump steer is the change in toe as it goes up and down and cycles. And that amount in some UTVs, like a Can-Am, depending on what year, make, and model, you can have 4 inches of toe change or bump steer, and that's a lot. We see, Mitch, you can probably give us a couple examples. What's the bump steer on an average factory like Turbo S?
Turbo S, 3.5 to probably 4 inches.
So it's just like a Can-Am X3.
Pretty bad.
How about Pro XP?
Pro XP, they're better, 1.5 to 2 inches.
That's in the front, but the back's like 5 inches.
Yeah, the back is terrible.
And you can't change that because there's no toe change setting for that.
Yeah.
How about early? Do you remember the Yamahas?
Ooh, Yamahas.
I don't think they were very bad. They were under an inch.
Yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head, but if they were that bad, it would definitely stick. So.
It would stick, so it weren't that bad. So XP or XP Turbo, I think those were under 2 inches.
Yep.
Now, the thing about all those numbers, though, is not every one of them is the same, and it's all differences in rack and pinion location in the chassis, how far the ball joint pins suck into the spindle. Those heights are really important, and that's where you develop a lot of the bump steer. So in the Pro R, at least in this one, we didn't have the bump steer numbers that were that bad. I mean, they were somewhere in the 1/2 inch, 3/4 range in that number, which is great compared to all the other ones factory. But it's still not awesome when it comes to the handling and feel in the steering wheel. I mean, 1/2 inch of bump, and especially the bigger the tire, the worse it gets with a factory 33 and maybe next year with 35s on these vehicles. Then 1/2 inch of bump, 5/8 of an inch of bump, 3/4 of an inch of bump is a problem. That all adds up to loads to the tie rods, loads on the rack and pinion, loads on the EPS, and that all comes back to steering wheel feel and kind of trying to rip your hands out of the wheel or the wheel out of your hands. So we have a cure for that in the front. If you come to the back and take a look right here, up close and personal if you can see it, the height of this tie rod location is adjustable with a BSD pin kit that you see right here. Now these spacers underneath are all different heights and thicknesses, and those can be placed underneath this pin hat, and it can raise the overall pivoting point of the system or lower it. This adjustability is our normal BSD kit that we currently sell for all kinds of UTVs right now, and you can adjust it and get the bump steer out of it. This one is much bigger and a completely different design just for the Pro R, and it's not available yet, but it is going to be very, very soon. So don't call us and ask us for this kit yet. This is the prototype that we've been running. Obviously, you can see this is a handmade outer tie rod assembly. We are currently working on a production version of this. It's going to be a few months, but just to let you know that we are working on it, and there are big advantages to having this adjustability. That is a patented system, by the way, so if you're thinking about making one real quick before we do, don't do that. But we were able to get this adjustment back down to 1/8 of an inch.
1/8 to 1/4.
1/8 to 1/4, depending. And 1/8 to 1/4 is spot on. I mean, that's what a lot of trophy truck teams shoot for. Class 1s are looking at 1/4 inch numbers, and we're very, very happy at that. And there was a big difference in how it feels in the steering wheel having gotten those numbers that low. You guys have any questions on any of that stuff you can tell us with? Steve, why don't you make one up? You look like you need to make one up. So, how long is your favorite
How long is what?
shaft, Steve? I'll get a question for you.
My favorite shaft would have to be the Pro R shaft because it's one of the girthiest and longest ones we have.
Which one's more important for the Pro R or yourself? Girth?
I'd say it's not about bottoming out, Justin. It's about making sure the sides are well taken care of. So I would go with girth.
You definitely want to keep the sides in perfect condition if you don't want to have a leaky shaft. leaky seals, not good. Yeah, not good for anybody, that's for sure. Yes, you have a question?
No, I've gotten this a couple times. So people want to know when the Pro R packages are out to buy, Justin, and they are out right now on the website.
You're right. Why don't you tell them about these packages? Do you have them memorized? No, you don't.
So I do know the packages, Justin.
Okay.
It's for the Pro R. It's a package, and it's 10% off on those packages, Justin, for the Pro R.
Well, let me
So
Good
yes,
stuff.
I know what they
Excellent
are.
stalling. Let me take a guess on one of the first packages. That's going to be a link package. There's a link package, right? Where you can do front sway bar links, rear sway bar links, and toe links. Basically everything that we have as link in the title, which is not that very imaginative, but it sounded good in the meeting, and so we went with it. Link package, you also have basically the shock package, which is going to be our billet lower loop on this front shock, as you can see. And this is actually a really good visual. You can see how this extended machine part of the loop surrounds the shaft and gives support so it doesn't have any issues with breaking the threads off. And these come supplied with a bump stop as well. That system gets rid of the weak spot. That coupled with limit straps and a spring kit. And that is, wow, I guessed pretty good. Mitch is over there, yeah.
Proud of you on that.
Nailed it.
That's pretty good.
So that package is like a home run on all of those fitting together, man, because you get springs, you get a limit strap to try and stop the extension fully, save the shock, and a lower loop. Perfect package, going to ride great. It's going to keep it on there for a long, long time with safe parts that are strong. So there's your kits. They are available. Thanks for pointing that out, Steve.
Anything for you, Justin.
Awesome. So talked about bump steer, talked about our bump steer kit, and talked about why the bump steer is important. We talked about track width scrub and why in a Pro R track width exists. Combination of the design of the suspension, combination of that with trying to get the biggest travel numbers possible to sell more units. Marketing 101, have to have the most, and camber to try and help that CV angle in the back is all part of it. But even with all of those things that we don't particularly like, it's the best riding UTV on the market, I think mostly because of the shock package. Steve.
Justin, just going off of our packages, Mr. Premature John would like everyone to know that ends at the end of this month.
Ooh,
so,
temporary.
It's only temporary. So just so you guys know, our packages are only temporary.
So jump on it before you miss your chance. They are only temporary. So thank you.
I got the same comment, Steve.
Did you?
I was going to say
also.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you, John.
So you guys, if you have any more questions, then shoot right now. Otherwise, we're going to boogie out of here. I'm going to finish so that all the Polaris executives don't call and blow me up for talking any smack. We're not. We're just pointing out facts as we see them. But I will say, with all of the things we talked about, it is by far the best riding UTV on the market stock. And I would highly recommend this vehicle if you're interested in ride quality. Probably the smoothest riding one made, especially through the big whoops. We do have a full Pro R review that we've been working very hard on between testing 2,500 miles worth of stuff on this vehicle and all the detail shots that we need for a very comprehensive video. That'll be coming out soon. Don't know when, a few weeks at least, but we will have a killer review for you to watch. Any other last minute questions?
I have like rapid fire questions that
have
nothing to do with Tech Tuesday.
Do it real quick.
Okay. You go first, Mitchie.
Okay. Would you need to readjust limit straps with the change of tire size?
No, but a heavier tire will stretch the strap faster. So after you put the heavy tire on it, you might find that you will adjust it after that a little quicker than normal. Steve.
Limit straps for the Pro R with Walker Evans.
Soon.
Soon, not yet. Materials are actually at the anodizer. I had a question from somebody this weekend at the Sandsport show about that, and we were able to confirm everything's already built, parts are made and anodized, and we will get them back in on the site soon. Steve.
A lot of people at the Sandsport show, not only do they love the 200, but they loved the radius rods on the rear. Justin, when are those going to be available?
Really good question. We are in the middle of welding those now. Then we've got powder coat, then they'll be out. So I'm going to go out and say about 2 weeks to 1 month, we will have those available. In the process, and I mean it, we are like blue lights and welding like crazy. Mitch.
Those are going to be cool. I'm excited.
Yeah, they work great. 7/8 rod ends, they never wear out.
Yes. On the subject of bump steer, any fix for the rear bump steer on an X3? Mine is so bad.
I don't know why yours would be any worse than anybody else, but I think that in our cycling and testing in the back, there's about 2 inches of bump steer in the back of an X3. You can't change it without changing the pivot locations of that toe link in the back, and so you're going to have some fabrication to fix it. I can't tell you whether you're going to make that system shorter or longer. I forget where it was.
Justin, when will you have Robbie Gordon on the live feed?
You know, Robbie and I talked about it. It's definitely going to happen. Probably next time he's through town with production vehicles. That was kind of our discussion. When he's got a production car and we can go and run it with him, he's going to leave it with us. We'll all probably sit down and chat about it beforehand. It'll be a pretty good feed. You guys probably like that because Steve is going to send it. Mitch, you got any more?
Yeah. What size paddle tires are best for the Pro R? There's like 17 people asking that.
I would go 33 or 35 in the paddle for this car, and I would probably go with a number 1 or number 2 paddle. That would be my choice. Taller, you do not want to run a short tire on this car. You're going to bottom it out if you do. Don't do it.
Phillips Racing really wants us to show the tire carrier better, please.
Oh, you know what, Landon? Just come over here and take a look at it. You can borrow it if you want, take it back and build it. It's not very hard.
A lot of people did ask this weekend who makes that.
We just whipped it up in the shop. Actually, Vanna White, number 1, Vanna White, number 2. That was like 3 days before we went to the pre-run the 500. They whipped it out.
So then I definitely lied to every single person I talked to because I said it was factory Polaris. So we made it.
So much for that, liar. Misinformation Steve. That's your new name. Mitch, anything else? We're out.
That's all I got.
All right, Steve, anything else?
Nothing, Justin. So
Come
what
on
we're
over
gonna
here.
do? Okay, yeah. What we're gonna do is we're gonna end it off with this beautiful Pro R in the background. And if you're looking to buy any products for this beautiful Pro R or any other vehicle you own, please visit www.shocktherapyusa.com. Or if you have any questions, please call the shop at 623-217-4959. Can I get a hi? Yeah?